Doctoring Differently podcast. I'm Dr. Naomi Lawrence-Reid, your host, a pediatrician and founder of the Doctoring Differently digital course platform, where I teach physicians of all specialties how to find and explore lucrative, flexible careers beyond full-time clinical medicine. In each episode of this podcast, I interview physicians who are pursuing innovative careers beyond full-time clinical medicine, as well as physician allies whose companies are aiding physicians in their pursuits. For more information, visit doctoringdifferently.com, and don't forget to subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I want to start this podcast in episode 1 with a little bit about me, my background, my story, and how I got here. I'm a pediatrician who initially envisioned a life in full-time clinical medicine. I did my residency in New York City at a large children's hospital, and I enjoyed the environment. I enjoyed my co-residents, and I envisioned a life working in the pediatric emergency department. After I graduated residency, I went on to work in the pediatric ER, but after a few years, I felt dissatisfied. I felt that this couldn't be it for my career. I became frustrated with the lack of autonomy, the unnegotiable salaries, and I felt that I had no control or autonomy over my future or my career in that department. I spoke to my colleagues and my former classmates and people around me. I found mentors and asked, is there anything else I can do? I don't see my future here in full-time clinical medicine. But I was told, this is what you signed up for. This is the best you'll get. I considered doing another residency or fellowship or getting another degree. I figured maybe more education will solve my unhappiness with where I am in my career, having completed pediatrics residency and working in that way only. But that didn't seem right to me. So after 3 years of working in a pediatric emergency department, I ended up leaving that job. And that was 3 years after residency. The final straw came when I went to a shift, and as many emergency departments have, we have a small back room where physicians chart, 2 computers, 2 desks, 2 chairs. And I went into that room, and the armrest on one of the chairs had broken off, and there were shards of metal. The other seat was taken, so that was the only one I could sit in for that shift to do my charting. And I did the whole shift with my arm close to my torso, close to my side, so that I wouldn't be scratched or hurt, and I left. There was a little Post-it note that said that the administration was aware and was working on a replacement and on a fix. But when I returned a few days later to another shift in the emergency department, I'd found that the administration had wrapped diapers around that chair. And in that moment, for me, I really understood my value to the department. We, of course, know how important charting is for any hospital and how important our notes are for billing, for insurances, for communication to other physicians and to patients. And given that the solution was to wrap diapers around the chair, I knew that I couldn't stay in that environment. That was, of course, the last straw. There had been a number of reasons I was dissatisfied before that, but at that moment, when I saw those diapers wrapped around the chair, I submitted my letter of resignation that night. And I'll tell you right now, I did not have a great plan for my future at that time. I had been almost 3 years in this job. Like many physicians, I was not taught how to find a physician job. I was not taught how to negotiate. I assumed that I would continue to fall into the right jobs, whether it be word of mouth or through my own connections along the way. But I knew that I needed to find another path, and I couldn't stay where I was. I'd heard about nurses being per diem, but I'd never really heard about too many doctors being per diem. But at that moment, I had almost $200,000 in educational debt, and I was renting a small apartment and driving my beloved Corolla from medical school, and I had bills that I had to pay. So the only option at that point for me felt like going per diem, and that's what I did. And I went per diem at another facility in town, in my community, and began to work that way. Now, let me tell you, at this point, I had a lot of concern. I think well-intentioned concern from, again, colleagues, classmates, because I left academic medicine and people don't really do that. And it felt like I was stepping away and getting off of the train. And could I ever come back if I ever wanted to come back? But at that point, I knew I had to try something else. This was the time for me to explore and truly find out if there were other things I could do with my medical degree, with my education, with residency training and board certification. Not necessarily wanting to do more training, more fellowships, more degrees. I wanted to know if what I already had would work for me. And I'm so glad that I did. And you can do it too. And from that place, that really was the jumping off point where I explored a number of other lucrative, flexible physician opportunities. I went on to explore locums opportunities. I started an aesthetics practice where I did Botox and fillers. I did Social Security adjudications. I became a medical expert witness. I participated in veteran disability exams. I had independent telemedicine as one of the things that I was able to supplement in my schedule. I did a number of things, including consulting and medical writing, and even consulting for academics. I've discovered an incredible world beyond full-time clinical medicine. And let's be clear, I'm still a doctor. Doctors who don't work in full-time clinical settings are still doctors. So please know that. That is a lot of what I hear from a lot of other physicians, that they feel like they'll be less of a physician if they're not full-time clinical. I still work clinically in some capacities, but I do it on my schedule, on my time, and I've been able to negotiate high rates for the very important work that I do and that we all do. Since leaving full-time clinical medicine almost 7 years ago, I've more than quadrupled my salary outside of full-time clinical medicine as a pediatrician. I'm able to take weeks and months off at a time. And in 2023, I was able to visit 6 continents, including Antarctica. And I never thought this life would be possible for me. I was told that as physicians, particularly as pediatricians, that I shouldn't get used to the idea of having disposable income or disposable time. That is my own. But I was able to find a way that it is possible. I'm able to work clinically, I'm able to work non-clinically, and I'm able to make my schedule and my salary and my life exactly what I want it to be. You'll hear this theme throughout the podcast, and I will make sure to bring it up with almost every guest, that there are no rules to this physician career. We are rule followers. We, as physicians, are very obedient. We come in as smart and energetic medical students in our early 20s typically, and we do what we're told. We study hard, we take our tests, we pick the best residency programs, we pick the best fellowships, and we do what we're taught, and we imagine that this field and this career has our best interests in mind. But by the time many of us get out in our early 30s, for most of us, we've recognized that, okay, this career may not be exactly what I envisioned 10 years ago when I entered, but so many of us feel like we're stuck or that we're trapped. That we feel like, okay, well, am I gonna go back and pick another career? I don't have the time I thought I'd have. I don't have the income I thought I'd have. I don't have any of the autonomy over my schedule or the way I want to practice medicine. It's very much controlled by people who are not physicians. And so many of us feel so stuck and so trapped in jobs or career paths that aren't right. And typically as physicians, we're not given a lot of permission to explore different ways of working. But I'm here to tell you that there are no rules to a physician career. There are no rules at all. You can work clinically, you can work non-clinically. You can work full-time, part-time, per diem. And if you need to take a step away from clinical medicine, you can. It is not going away. It will always, always, always be there. but we can explore different ways of working. We can try expert witness work or consulting or medical writing or aesthetics. And there are a number of ways that we can work in ways that work for us and our family. But there is no one right way. There's only the way that works for you. And finally, I want physicians to know that you have permission. I like to say, physicians don't need permission, but we need permission. We are used to being given a degree or a diploma or a certification that gives us permission to do things. And that is what we are often looking for from our institutions, either the institutions that trained us or where we are currently working. We're looking for permission because at every step along the way, we've needed that diploma, that degree, and that certificate. But at this stage, if you are a physician who has a medical license, is board certified in any specialty at all, you have incredible options for any type of work, really anywhere in the world. In each episode of this podcast, I will speak with physicians who themselves have transformed their careers and have stories somewhat similar to mine. They started off on the path that we're all taught, but at some point there was a change and a shift, and they discovered and recognized that there was an alternative way to practice. And a lot of them have turned around and created portals and avenues for physicians to be able to also take part in that work. And I want all physicians to know that there's nothing that I will talk about on this podcast that is not available to every physician of every specialty, regardless of where you are, whether you have trained as a fellow, whether you've done a few fellowships. There is nothing that you can't do that we are talking about in this podcast. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you. Don't forget to subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And each episode will also be uploaded to our YouTube channel under Doctoring Differently. And finally, if you are curious about this course and how you can have the step-by-step guide and manual to transforming your own physician career and have the tools to explore a number of lucrative and flexible opportunities from any specialty, go to doctoringdifferently.com for all syllabus and tuition information. I'm excited to use each episode of this podcast to expose physicians to the many flexible, lucrative opportunities beyond full-time clinical medicine. Because regardless of your specialty or the stage of your career, you can expand your career possibilities and you can doctor differently.